Viewers, welcome to the Kashmir Culture Center, Mukaddama Kashmir, a case of Kashmir. Our today's topic is how to avoid a nuclear war in South Asia. The participants our today's meetings are Mr. Ghulam Hussain, leader Free Kashmir Movement UK, Mr. Abbas Bhatt, Chairman Kashmir National Party UK, and Mr. Mihail Probesting, a writer, journalist, and International Secretary of RCIT Austria. Welcome, sir. So, friends, as you know, in the recent era, only Kashmir is a nuclear flashpoint between three nuclear rivals, and there is currently fierce fighting on line of control LOC and on line of actual control LAC. 3 years ago, India and Pakistan were on the edge of a nuclear war. The American and Western media have feared that such a war could kill around 220 million people. This conflict has been discussed in the AU Parliament since 2007. In this regard, we have organized several seminars and conferences with the members of Austrian and European parliaments to find a peaceful solution and a way forward to avoid a catastrophic situation. So, my question is, Sir Abbas Bhatt from Kashmir National Party. Sir, what do you think? Is there a possibility of a nuclear war?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you, Khansab. So nice of you, especially selecting or choosing this particular topic, the how to avoid nuclear war in South Asia. As we all know, South Asia consists of 9 countries, including Jammu and Kashmir, Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Maldives, and as I said earlier, Jammu and Kashmir as far as its population is. So what I was saying actually that before we find out how we can avoid actually the war in South Asia, we have to go and find out what's the root cause. Actual root cause, basically in South Asia and Southeastern Asia, there are 3 countries, China, Pakistan, and India, who got the capability of nuclears. And that nuclear can lead to nuclear war as well. The first thing is find out what is the root cause. If you go back and find out from 1947 up to now, when China became as an independent country, India became a country, and the creation of a new Muslim country, which is known as Pakistan. Only issue between them, or we can say the major issue between them, is the issue of Jammu and Kashmir. Because in 1947, Jammu and Kashmir also become an independent country. Whether we like it or not, on 15th of August 1947, Jammu Kashmir, 84,000 square mile of the area, become as an independent state, like Pakistan, like India, like any other country. But unfortunately, the first war between India and Pakistan on state of Jammu and Kashmir, which was in 1948, create all this problem. And to avoid this one, actually, the only solution which we can think of, that we should give the people of Jammu and Kashmir their basic right to determine and find out the future of their own country. Whether they want to join Pakistan as Pakistan wishes, or they want to join India according to Indian wishes, or they want to become an independent state, like the majority of the population of Jammu and Kashmir want. This is the basic thing. Unless we don't sort out the problem, don't want to solve the problem of Jammu and Kashmir, there is no way that we can find a better solution, especially when the 3 major countries in that area got a nuclear arsenal, and they got very heavy nuclear arsenals, which can lead to any war. Also, attack on the Ladakh region, which is the part of state of Jammu Kashmir, controlled or administered by India, and they took some part of it. As before that, China was not a major party in it, but after this Ladakh war, actually, they become a major party at the moment. So these 3 countries on a blink of war anytime. So the only way to avoid, as far as I can say, actually, to avoid it, to let people of Jammu and Kashmir to decide about the future of their own country, which is basically the basic human rights for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. This is the few things which I want to say. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatt. So, Mr. Ghulam Hussain, sir, I would request you to please tell us something. How can we prevent such a war? So, an unnecessary war of the people in South Asia, please.
I think you need to look at it in 2 ways. One is in general, that in context of the nuclear war, because now there are many countries, including the 3 countries in South Asia, China, India and Pakistan, who have the nuclear power. But there have been international efforts to control that. And one of that has been the non-nuclear proliferation treaty, which was going to have its 50-year review in April this year in United States. But due to COVID, that had to be postponed. I have been told as of today that it is planned subject to everything being okay next year. And then what they do is they encourage the nations who have the weapons to sign the treaty that they will not develop anymore. Now, India, Pakistan, and China, as far as I know, haven't signed that treaty. I'm not 100% sure about China. Even Iran had signed that treaty at some stage, but because of the other problem, that has been sort of suspended. More recently, there has been another effort to develop a United Nations Treaty for Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. I understand that Austria was one of the countries who led on that in the United Nations, and that was passed 2 years ago. Again, China is not a party to that, and I don't think India and Pakistan are party to that. Also, there have been efforts to ban on which is called the further nuclear test ban strategy, which the countries which already have got it, they were supposed to be stopped from trying any further. Again, one of the countries which is developing more now, and I understand has not signed that strategy, is China. And the reason why I have been led to believe that China is doing that, due to the current tension between India and China, and because of the Trump administration's interest in supporting India, China is very fearful that if America gets involved, their weapon arsenal, etc., might be more superior. So China is trying to develop more weapons, and they need to be encouraged. I think there is a belief in the people who are working on the international level, trying to get this ban on the nuclear. They believe that in the entire world, the most flashpoint where that war could start is now Kashmir, and it has been for some time. So it is very worrying for Kashmiris and also for the South Asians. So one of the things that we can do is, through whatever means, encourage China to sign that ban treaty though they don't develop any further weapons. And one way that might happen, and I don't think any of us can influence that, if Trump doesn't get re-elected, if we get a more sensible leader or more reliable leader with a cool head in the United States, they might not be threatening the region that much, and China might be able to listen. Again, that I've been told by one or two people who can be seen to be experts in that field and who are working in that field. So collectively, I think we need to get India and Pakistan to sign non-proliferation treaty. We need to get China to sign the test ban strategy, so the treaty, so they don't develop any more weapons. And that is in the general context. But the cause of war, there are two schools of thought. One is that after the development of nuclear weapons in South Asia, the danger of any war between India and Pakistan was less, because they wouldn't get into the traditional war with more advanced weapons, because the danger is that the losing side may then resort to nuclear weapons. So in fact, there should be no war between India and Pakistan, but they keep having. The more dangerous point, I was reading a paper from the American Peace Institute that they have done something following the February 1919 situation between India and Pakistan, where India bombed Kohota, Kashmir, and one of their planes was shut down, and their pilot, Abhinandan, I think his name was, he was arrested. Modi government issued a warning to Pakistan that unless that pilot is returned, we will attack nuclear, and they had actually given some idea of what they were planning to do to the people that they were in close contact with, and that has come out, which was very serious. In retaliation, Pakistan was also prepared to mobilize the weapons and do that. Now, this is a very close scenario. So if we get to that situation, if Pakistan, for whatever reason, they hadn't returned the pilot within 5 days, there would have been another attack from the Indian government. There would have been another response, and that could have led. So we've been very close to that. Also, now the situation between China, if you listen to sometime the Indian media, they sort of present China as a bigger threat than Pakistan now. And their feeling is that China is not following the rules, but China also blames India. So I think the three powers, whichever of them starts this, the area that is going to be impacted is Kashmir. In another sort of meeting, I was saying that the bulls are going to fight, but the bushes are going to be damaged. And obviously, in this case, it's not bulls and bushes, but it's the real powers, nuclear powers, and the poor people of places like Kashmir who are going to suffer. And the sufferance is going to be much worse, many times more than the atomic bomb in Hiroshima. And the consequences for that area will be colossal loss. I think you mentioned a figure of 2 million lives, but I was reading that there is going to be damage to the environment and damage to the climate to the extent that the entire world population would be affected. The crop growth will be affected, and this may lead to starvation of many, many people, and through starvation, death. So it's a worldwide catastrophe that is awaiting us. So we need to do that. And the simple way to do that, as Abbas Bhatt has indicated, is that we try to reach a solution to the Kashmir issue, which has been going on for a long time. And people of Kashmir want that to be determined. They don't want to see that as a land dispute between India and Pakistan. For us, it is a matter of human rights, it's a matter of life, and it's a matter of unit. No first use strategy. Britain would sign that. If I was talking to a Labour colleague today, if Labour Party wins, they will definitely do that, and they will work on that. At the moment, we've got Conservative government. They might not be so keen on that, but worldwide, we want to see this peace. One of the advantages of having the non-proliferation strategy sort of place in a treaty in place is that when it was signed in 1970, they expected by the end of century there will be 32 nuclear powers in the world. As it happened, by the end, I think there were only 7 or 8. So that has had an impact, and it can have further impact. So we must continue to work with the powers that are working on that, countries that are working on that. And I'm looking at the gentleman from Austria. I don't know a great deal, but I've heard that Austria, even though it's a small country, it is playing a big role in that. So we thank you for that.
So before I will go to Mr. Mikhail, I have a question to you both, sir. How China became a party in Kashmir conflict, because Kashmir became independent on 15th August 1947, and the Kashmir conflict started on 22nd October, and so this is going on. And China became independent on 1st October 1949. The first UN resolution was on 17th January 1948 on Kashmir, the UNCIP, UNCIP resolutions. I am unable to understand when China became a party, because China became independent 1.5 years after this conflict started.
Answer, question is, might is right. If you have got power, you can do whatever you want. You want to say to the world, yes, this is.
Mr. Mikhail, please, can you tell us something? So you are an experienced journalist, writer, you travel a lot, and you are busy with the conflict regions, the people who are struggling for freedom, for the plebiscite, for self-determination. So what is your experience?
Evening from my side. As you can see in the background, it's already getting darker here. I want to thank for the invitation by Brother Naeem Khan. And I'm also glad to have the opportunity to participate in a meeting with long-time activists for the cause of the liberation of the Kashmiri people who are facing oppression since many, many decades. So I'm glad to have the opportunity to join in this discussion. Since our time is limited, I would like to briefly outline in a very summarized way a few theses which might at least help to provoke a discussion. First, it is important to speak about what we want, what we desire. But first, it's necessary to talk about what is the situation and what are the roots, as Brother Aversput said at the beginning, what are the roots of this problem? And allow me to say something which might sound very provocative, but I want to state it very clearly because I think it's necessary to be realistic, which is war is inevitable in Asia. War is inevitable in South Asia. You can see it, it's a process since years that the rivalry between the now two largest imperialist powers in the world, the United States and China, is successively accelerating this tension. And I think it's clear that sooner or later there will be military clashes in the South China Sea or around Taiwan or whatever. And likewise, it's also clear that the tensions between China and India, and also India and Pakistan, but I think China and India are the main factors which are rivaling for domination in South Asia. That also the tensions between these powers, in fact it's inevitable that this will intensify, and we have seen this in 2017. Now again, sooner or later, this will transform into open warfare. Why? Why do I think this is inevitable? And the reason is simply that we are living in a world where the political and economic system, which I would call capitalism, this system is in decline and in crisis. This has deep roots. It's not the time. It's too much, not enough time to elaborate on this in more in detail. I allow myself to take the opportunity to draw attention to a book which I recently published about the growing rivalry between the great powers. But the fundamental background basically is that the economic system is in crisis. The climate crisis is accelerating as a result of this. This has massive consequences for the people. As a result, the rivalry between the great powers and between regional powers is accelerating. If the cake becomes smaller, all the robbers are fighting harder to get their share. This is the inevitable logic. So that's the first point. Secondly, for the same reason, because of the decline of the political and economic system, because of this, most governments in the world, including in Asia, face increasing domestic political crisis and social instability. And as a result, they need to accelerate chauvinism. They need to accelerate militarism. India it's not the only example, but it's a very good example. Modi was close to lose the election last year, and as a result, after the crisis in February, he provoked chauvinism against Pakistan, and again, when it became clear, you must not forget the world economic crisis did not start with COVID, it started in autumn last year. And Modi was aware of this, and his attacks, his abolition of the formal rights of Kashmir in August last year was an attempt to create and to intensify the chauvinist sentiment in India in order to avert public attention to this domestic economic and political crisis. So because of these fundamental factors, the general trend in South Asia, as well as in other places in the world, the general trend to chauvinism, militarism, provoking war, all this is accelerating. Let me finish, because I don't want to speak too long. Let me finish with the following. There is a famous saying, and all of you will know it: no justice, no peace. And this is also true for South Asia, and this is particularly true for Kashmir. The root of the problem is the system of exploitation and oppression, and therefore the abolition of exploitation and oppression is necessary. And the right of the Kashmiri people to have their own state, in my opinion, it should be an independent Kashmir controlled by the working people, by the oppressed. The right of national self-determination is a fundamental right and the Kashmiri people have fought for this right for a very long time. And it's necessary, in my opinion, in our opinion, it's necessary to build an international solidarity movement in order to support the national liberation struggle of the Kashmiri people. Thanks for having this time.
Thank you, Mihail. Abbas, but what would you say on the presentation of Mr. Mikhail?
I can only request him. It's a nice presentation, but it's my personal request actually, as a people of Jammu, as a son of the soil, basically, that the people of Jammu Kashmir are really suffering, and I'm sure, as Mr. Ramson said, it's a small country. Syria is not very small country, but they can definitely play a big role, because in this situation, the only country which can play a better role actually between India, Pakistan and China are those countries who got less economic interest with India, less economic interest with China and Pakistan. No other country, like bigger European country like UK, German, French, they got an economic interest, a sensible leadership in all the countries, especially in South Asia. In Pakistan and in India, we need sensible leadership. Without sensible leadership, you can't actually win from them. And the other thing we should remember actually, that if India or Pakistan using their arsenals, the nuclear arsenals, they will destroy their own countries. They will damage their own population actually. It's not that India will use arsenal, nuclear arsenal, and they will destroy Pakistan and nothing will happen with India, because they're so close with each other that any one of them use those sort of nuclear, they will damage themselves. And that damage is not limited to South Asia, but I think it will affect actually a bigger part of the world as well. There's such ones. If Mr. Michael can help us actually, because this is the country, I have not much economic interest with India and Pakistan or in China. If they can actually help us, because we need a country who can take over case to United Nations. That country got no interest with Jammu and Kashmir. That actually can help us, and we can fight our own case.
So, Mr. Sir, you want to say that Kashmiris still have no opportunity to represent themselves anywhere?
No, we got no actually. Tell me any single case actually in United Nations or any agreement between India and Pakistan, Shimla agreement, whichever, Lahore summit, whichever, where was there was no representation by the people of Jammu and Kashmir.
The Kashmir Committee is just a political corruption, just to...
I think you use a very right word. I'm trying to avoid that word, but you use very good word. Yeah. It is definitely political corruption.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
I fully share and understand the desire that the Kashmiri people should have their own representation. Yes. But I wonder, do you think it would really change so much if there would be a formal representation of Kashmir at the United Nations? Thinking about the Palestinians, they have a representation at the United Nations already since the 1970s. But the Palestinian people, they are living under terrible conditions still. So I think we should not overestimate the power of the United Nations too much, in my opinion.
I agree up to some extent, but in that particular case, Mr. Ghulam Hussain might have different view. I'm sure he will say what we want. But my point of view over there is that in case of Palestine and Israel, there is direct interest of United States. But in case of Jammu and Kashmir, United States haven't got direct interest in it. So we can hope actually that we might get some sort of positive solution from there.
Firstly, I'll come back to this point. Firstly, thank you, Mr. Mikhail, for your excellent presentation. I have got a couple of questions on your presentation, but firstly, to deal with your question, I think your observation about Palestine is right, but in the early days, until Palestine was recognized, they didn't have that right. Having had that right, their issue is more internationalized. Kashmir issue has not been internationalized by the Kashmiris at the forums that make decisions. So, for example, at the United Nations Security Council, if we want to raise the matter, we have got no way of direct access to that to raise that. If we were a recognized government, then we will have our embassies in various countries, and some countries in late 60s, one of the former leaders of Liberation League, K.H. Khurshid, who was president of Azad Kashmir, at that time he asked Ayub Khan, Ayub Khan was a military dictator, but he was also, I think, subsequently elected as a president of Pakistan. In his cabinet, there was Mr. Bhutto, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, you must have heard of the name. K.H. Khurshid suggested this to them, that the Pakistan government should recognize Kashmir and get all its friendly nations to recognize that. Ayub, on the first instance, accepted that suggestion and asked him to investigate further, along with the then foreign minister of Pakistan, and seek opinion from the international world. And I have been told by second hand, but I knew K.H. Khurshid personally. I worked with him. I was secretary of that party in UK from 85 to 90. And I worked closely with him in 86 to 88 when he died. So basically, there were in the world altogether about 28 countries who showed their willingness to accept that Kashmir as an independent state. Having accepted that, I think it gives us a foot in the door. But that on its own, you are absolutely right, doesn't guarantee that our problem will be solved. But we, I think, have one advantage. We have many disadvantages, but we have maybe two advantages over the Palestinians. One is that the Kashmiri diaspora is spread throughout the world. Whether you take Europe, whether you take Canada, America, Australia, and in United Kingdom, where we are living, there is at least 1 million people of our origin. And some of us have made big ways into the local government and the parliamentary houses, etc. So we have got that possibility that if we were being supported by our embassies, etc., and we could work in collaboration with them, we will have a better presentation. Thirdly, fighting Israel in any forum is like fighting America direct.
Yeah.
And Palestine cannot fight America. Whereas I think even now, although India is a big power, fighting India and Pakistan, they won't be fighting together against her, I hope. And even China is not as big as America, because America is fully supporting Israel. So in order to win any war, whether that is diplomatic or sort of conventional war or a power struggle, you are fighting with America. And Palestine hasn't got any loyal partners in the region. We are hoping that recognition plus loyal support from Pakistan, hopefully loyal support from other neighbors like Afghanistan and Iran. One of the parties that I belong to, Kashmir Freedom Movement, we have got it in our manifesto that once we are able to achieve a free and independent Kashmir. But I have two questions from your presentation. One, you have mentioned that it is inevitable that there will be a war in that region. But to what extent do you think that war, as I have said, I've heard from other sources, will be starting from Kashmir rather than another place in South Asia? And two, you mentioned that let us develop an international solidarity. And it's something that we are talking on every day. I think one of the things that we keep talking to each other and other people keep telling us that Kashmiris are not united. I think in any country there is differences of views and there are different political parties. I don't think we can reunite that, but we need to build a movement like the Palestinians for freedom in the first instance and the right of self-determination. But the question I'm asking you, what can countries like your country in Europe or people like yourself, individuals who are in the places of influence, etc., do to help us forge that solidarity movement and or be part of that?
Okay. Shall I answer now?
Yes.
Yes. You were briefly offline, so I could not see what Yes. Look, I think it is. I'm not, honestly, I don't have a glass bowl and I cannot make predictions about the exact cause of future developments. So it's difficult for me to say if the place to start for the beginning of the next war in South Asia will be Kashmir. But it's clear that Kashmir is the most likely place, and it is as I don't need to tell this to you, you know it yourself. It is not only the contentious issue between Pakistan and India. It is also China also is directly involved in it, and you know it yourself. I don't need to explain this to here that it is a geopolitical and strategically crucial region, not only for Pakistan and India, but for China too. But what I think is important is, and this is a general experience because we are collaborating with many movements of oppressed people, of the Palestinian people, the Syrian people, the Chechen people, etc., etc. And our experience is that, if you allow me to say this, there is a general problem or challenge which often takes place, which is that activists of such liberation movements often hope that this or that government of a foreign power will really help them. And often this is an illusion, and often it results in a mistaken subordination to foreign policy interests of such a government, such a foreign power. And in my opinion, or in our opinion, this is a real mistake. Of course, it's necessary to discuss, no doubt about this. But in our opinion, it is crucial for a movement of an oppressed people to remain politically independent and not to subordinate themselves to other foreign powers. For example, in Hong Kong, where the people are struggling for democratic rights, but there are also forces who believe that Trump, the most crazy president in recent history, will help them. So these are dangerous illusions. India is not Modi. It is wrong to us to believe, to imagine that the whole Indian people are standing behind Modi. Yes, there is a certain segment of really chauvinist forces of the BJP, etc. And I think it's important to build a kind of alliance or bringing together forces who all face the same enemy, the enemy of the rulers, of the oppressors, so that those who have a common interest in liberation join forces. The Kashmiri people have started an intifada, an uprising in 1989, and they have sacrificed 100,000 people.
Would it be possible, starting from people like yourself, to get like-minded people like you, and then maybe I have other friends who are thinking along the same lines, who might be able to do that in another country? So do you think that is a realistic possibility?
I think certainly we should try to do so, and if possible, a kind of coordination, or starting with a coordination on an international level. I think this would be, in any case, it would be necessary, and we should try.
Thank you.
So, friends, thank you very much. So, our time is almost over.
I'm sure we will definitely achieve something out of this meeting. A special thanks to Michael, actually, from Australia,